You live on your own. You certainly don't need an entire house. My sister, Madison, wanted my place for her growing family. I refused. She called me self-centered and ended up struggling significantly with debt and expenses. The name is Noah. I am the older brother, 31 years old, and my younger sister, who is now 29, has always been the favored child. Allow me to guide you through the whole story from its very beginning. Here's the reality. My parents had me while they were still establishing their careers. 4 years later, my sister was born. It was clear from the outset who was their primary focus. My parents were always cordial to me, but once my sister arrived, everything seemed to revolve around her. Outsiders noticed it too. Family friends would often remark on the sheer amount of attention she commanded, but my parents would just chuckle it off. During our childhood, the favoritism was unmistakable. My birthday parties were small affairs with a simple homemade cake, whereas Madison's involved rented venues and long invitation lists. When I inquired about the disparity, my father's reply was, "You're an adult now." I was 10 and she was 6. The same pattern applied to material possessions. I spent months saving up for a top-of-the-line scooter. She merely expressed a desire for a new bicycle and received one by the end of the week. My mother's reasoning was invariably, "She is the baby. Let her enjoy it while she can." School experiences also highlighted the favoritism. I earned excellent grades and swiftly found a stable job. My sister would bring home mediocre reports or a finger painting and proudly display it on the refrigerator. I achieved the runner-up spot in a regional science fair. My father was absent, citing a crucial work commitment. She had a single spoken line in a school assembly, and both parents took the entire afternoon off from work to attend. My mother's excuse was always that Madison became easily anxious and required their presence for reassurance. I was a well-behaved child, stayed clear of any trouble, excelled academically, and assisted diligently around the house. Yet my parents acted as if I required no attention or support. I was considered fine. While my sister was continually celebrated as the exceptional one or the baby, I was repeatedly reminded, "You're older, you should understand," or "She's younger, just let her have it." It was as if my sole function was to accommodate her needs. By the time I reached junior high, the dynamics were largely set. My sister was at the core of everything. I was merely there to assist and ensure things ran smoothly without causing complications. At that age, you start to observe the subtleties more acutely, and they were numerous. In the 7th grade, I wanted to enter an engineering competition that involved building a small solar-powered vehicle, which required both a registration fee and materials. When I brought it up at dinner, my father dismissed it as too costly, and my mother suggested I simply forget about it. 2 weeks later, my sister enrolled in a week-long dance camp that cost nearly 3 times as much, and they paid without a moment's of hesitation. I ended up constructing a rudimentary model using only spare parts I found in the garage. I couldn't compete, but my teacher, Mr. Harrison, was impressed by my initiative. That's when the realization fully dawned on me. If I wanted something, I had to procure it myself.
However, life at home extended beyond just money. It was about how we were treated. If my sister created a mess, I was expected to clean it up. If anything went missing, I was instantly presumed to be the culprit. Once, she carelessly left an open carton of juice on the sofa, permanently staining the upholstery. My mother summoned me from my room and instructed me to clean the area. I stated truthfully that it wasn't my fault. She responded, "I know, but she's had a tiring day. Just take care of it." That kind of incident was routine. Madison also had a pattern of being disrespectful. She would argue, roll her eyes, and forcefully shut doors. My parents termed it her attitude. If I behaved similarly, it was labeled outright as disrespect, and I would face immediate sanctions. There were several instances when my father would pull me aside and lecture me, saying things like, "She is your younger sister. You must maintain the peace. Never provoke her." It never mattered who started the disagreement. It was always my responsibility to smooth things over. In high school, I began to see how drastically my life differed from those of my friends. Their parents attended their soccer games, helped them with class projects, and frequently asked about their academic progress. At my house, most interactions with me consisted of instructions. Empty the trash. Help your sister with her schoolwork. Be sure not to stay out late. My sister, conversely, received constant inquiries and praise. How was your afternoon? What would you like to have for dinner tonight? That was an exceptional effort. By the age of 18, I had entirely stopped anticipating support from my parents and focused purely on my own resources. I began cutting neighbors' lawns, taking on various small tasks, saving every dollar, and purchasing my own necessities. My sister continued to have everything handed to her, and she even joked once, "I'm the favorite, obviously." My parents simply smiled. I stayed silent, knowing that protesting would achieve nothing.
By the start of my senior year in high school, I had stopped asking for anything at all. I rarely attended school excursions, knowing the answer would almost certainly be a denial. The class once visited a major science museum located near Boston, Massachusetts, which cost approximately $45. I didn't even bother to mention it. I used to believe our money was simply tight, but then I'd observe my parents taking my sister shopping for new clothes or high-tech gadgets. I once overheard my mother speaking on the phone with a close relative. She stated, "He's doing well. He doesn't need much. She's the one we have to concentrate on. She is far more sensitive." I believe that's precisely how they saw me, someone who needed neither help nor attention. But I did. I had simply mastered the art of not expecting it. By the time I was a junior, I had actively sought out various income streams. I'd clear snow from driveways, maintain yards, and walk dogs. It wasn't a fortune, but it gave me a sense of autonomy. If I wanted a new textbook or a video game, I bought it myself. My parents commended this as responsibility and expressed pride in my newfound independence. They never realized it was born out of necessity. Meanwhile, my sister continued to receive whatever she desired. If she wanted to join a new social club, they paid for it. If she decided to quit a week later, they simply agreed that it was fine. She also enjoyed showcasing her privilege. She'd constantly tell me, "Mom and Dad said I'm unique." I would dismiss the comments, but they always lingered. One final notable incident from that period, there was a significant career fair hosted at the school. I desperately wanted to go, as several major tech companies from the West Coast were in attendance. It was scheduled for a Saturday morning. I asked my father for a ride. He immediately said he was too busy as he had to drive my sister to a friend's small social gathering. My mother told me to use public transport. I went anyway, but the bus route was lengthy and slow, causing me to miss the introductory session. When I returned home, my sister was happily recounting how much fun she had at the party, and my parents were listening with beaming smiles. I didn't even bring up the career fair. By the end of high school, I had entirely ceased expecting them to be present for any significant event in my life. I focused on my studies, worked whenever possible, and planned to move out immediately. By the time I graduated high school in June, I was certain I could not depend on my parents for anything substantial. They covered a small portion of my essential college application fees, but every other expense I incurred came directly from my savings. My sister, who had just turned 19, already owned a small pre-owned sedan that my parents had purchased outright for her. I asked if I might borrow it for my graduation night, but the answer was a firm no, as she might unexpectedly need it. I ended up sharing a ride with a classmate. It didn't bother me much. I had already accepted that I had to manage everything independently.
I was accepted into a respected state university. Nothing overly prestigious, but solid, and crucially, it was located in a different city, Denver, Colorado. I craved distance. My parents made a big point of emphasizing that they could not offer much financial aid and that I needed to be entirely self-sufficient. I had secured a strong financial aid package and a modest academic scholarship. They paid for my first semester's textbooks in August, but I covered everything else, including my accommodation, food, and transport, through a combination of part-time work and the money I had saved from mowing lawns and odd jobs during high school. My sister, when she started her local community college later that year, was given a large celebratory farewell dinner. When I departed for school, it was only a quick, perfunctory goodbye. The first year was challenging, but I learned immeasurably. I worked evening shifts at a small coffee shop near campus. On weekends, I picked up shifts at a local bookstore. My grades remained excellent, but I missed out on many social events and didn't hang out as much as my peers. I didn't care. The satisfaction of earning everything I had was immense. I maintained a stringent budget, meticulously tracking every single expenditure in a dedicated ledger, down to the smallest snack. I quickly learned that if cash isn't accounted for, it vanishes. When I needed a new device or a better laptop, I planned and saved for 6 months in advance. Meanwhile, my sister remained the primary focus of my parents' concern. She changed majors 3 times before deciding that formal education was not for her. She lived at home, rent-free. They bought her a brand new crossover vehicle because her previous one was deemed too old and unreliable. I learned about it when my mother called me, asking for help setting up the Bluetooth connection. I wasn't surprised. During family video calls, Madison would often complain about being bored or expressing a wish to travel the world. My parents would nod reassuringly, saying, "We'll definitely make something happen." When I mentioned I was taking 17 credit hours and working 35 hours a week, their usual reply was simply, "You've always been good at handling a busy schedule." In my second year, I secured a far better job. One of my professors helped me land a position as a paid intern at a niche technology firm in downtown Seattle, Washington. It paid significantly more than the coffee shop, and the owner was flexible with my demanding class schedule. I kept the bookstore shifts on Saturdays. Most mornings, I left my shared apartment at 7:45 a.m. and returned well after dark. But my savings account balance steadily climbed. I opened my first proper investment account and began contributing to a small emergency fund. I vividly remember sitting at my small desk feeling genuine pride over the $1,200 I had managed to keep intact. It wasn't a large sum, but it was purely mine. The consistent lack of emotional or financial support from my family no longer bothered me. It had become the standard. I rarely called home except for major holidays in December and birthdays. My parents would inquire briefly about my schooling, then immediately shift the conversation to my sister's latest career plans. She worked at a boutique for a little under a month before quitting because she disliked the opening hours. My mother insisted she just needed more time to discover her true calling. I was sorely tempted to point out that I didn't exactly enjoy working multiple double shifts, but I kept my thoughts to myself.
By my junior year, I had streamlined every aspect of my life. I moved into a more affordable apartment with 3 other roommates, sold my old bicycle, and used the money I had saved to buy a moderately priced used sedan. It wasn't luxurious, but it was exceptionally dependable. Every single penny counted. I took on additional freelance work online, simple data entry, proofreading, or anything that offered quick pay. I also started reading intensely about personal finance and investment. Nothing complex, just core concepts like building savings, careful budgeting, and the power of compound interest. I didn't have much to invest, but I loved the feeling of being prepared for the future. My parents organized a lavish event for my sister's 20th birthday. She received a brand new high-end tablet and an all-inclusive 5-day trip to the California coastline with her closest friends, fully paid for by them. I sent her a simple text message reading, "Happy birthday." I had no celebration for my own 21st birthday. I marked the occasion by working a shift and ordering takeout with a single friend. It wasn't hurtful, it was simply the established reality. My parents had set 2 distinct sets of standards for us, and they always had. I simply made sure to remain focused on my path. By the time I was preparing to graduate, I had accumulated enough savings for a substantial down payment on a property and had paid off all my small student loans. I did not notify my parents right away, as I didn't want to hear comparisons or backhanded compliments. When I finally mentioned it casually during a phone call, my father's immediate response was, "That's wonderful!
Now, perhaps you can assist your sister when she finds herself in a tight spot." That statement resonated with me deeply. It wasn't meant as a joke. They genuinely viewed me as her permanent safety net. That was the pivotal moment I decided that everything I achieved would be exclusively for me. I would not allow their priorities to dictate mine. After graduation, in May, I decided to stay in the same city where I attended university. The technology company where I had interned offered me a full-time position. The starting salary wasn't immense, but for a 24-year-old fresh out of college, it was more than sufficient. I moved into a nicer, dual-occupancy apartment, kept my dependable car running, and intensified my savings plan each month. My goal was straightforward: keep working diligently, save aggressively, and eventually purchase my own place. At home, nothing had changed. My sister, at 22, was still living comfortably with my parents. She never returned to college after dropping out of community college. She held a series of brief, temporary jobs, resigned when she disliked the schedule, and often complained about not receiving sufficient financial assistance. My parents protected her as if she was constantly under stress. Every time I called, the conversation inevitably circled back to her. "Your sister is trying to find her way. She is currently very stressed. Please be kind to her. She is extremely sensitive." Around this time, her open rudeness toward me became much more pronounced. When I visited for the Thanksgiving holiday, she treated me like an unwanted guest in her own home. She would carelessly leave her belongings everywhere and make snide remarks about my clothes or my car. "Seriously, you're still driving that old junker? Do you even take time to enjoy life working nonstop like that?" If I chose to ignore her, she would prod further. "Why are you so quiet? Are you too important for us now?"
One November holiday, I brought a small assortment of quality craft beers and snacks. Nothing over the top, just a thoughtful contribution. She rolled her eyes and remarked, "Thanks, but Mom already organized everything. You really don't have to show off your money." My parents offered no rebuke. My father actually told me, "Noah, don't take offense. She's only kidding around." When she began dating a new boyfriend, Ethan, things escalated. She constantly bragged about how supportive he was and how they were planning a big future. At one family dinner, she made a point of mentioning that Ethan doesn't just work all the time like some people. My mother lightly chuckled. My father chimed in, "She just wants you to relax a little." I kept my distance, but the pattern was undeniable. They consistently downplayed all my hard-earned accomplishments while exaggerating everything she did. Around that season, I received my first professional promotion. My manager called me into his office and offered me a leadership role on the technology team. I was incredibly proud. I planned a modest celebration dinner with my closest friends and extended an invitation to my parents and sister. They indicated they would try their best to attend. The day arrived. I had reserved a pleasant venue, nothing ostentatious, but I wanted to celebrate my achievement. Everyone showed up, except my family. I called my mother the day after. She apologized profusely. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Your sister had just received a new online certification, and we had to take her out to celebrate." It was a simple, non-career-defining online course certificate, yet they acted as if it were a major professional milestone. My dad interjected, "You know how she is. We couldn't say no." That night, I definitively realized that I had stopped expecting them to show up for anything that truly mattered to me. Despite the ongoing family drama, my work life was deeply rewarding. I kept advancing, saving more capital, and actively seeking opportunities for professional growth. I learned to avoid all unnecessary expenditure. I started studying more complex investment strategies and real estate markets. My weekends were reserved for unwinding, meeting friends, and meticulously checking property listings in the Dallas, Texas area. My long-term goal was simple. I wanted to own my own residential property before I turned 33.
The family calls remained the same. If they contacted me, it was almost always about my sister. "Could you look over her new resume? She needs advice on securing a small loan. She's considering launching a micro business. Maybe you can mentor her." If I stated that I was too busy, their tone would instantly become cold. My mother once warned me,
Don't forget the family who raised you. I didn't engage in an argument. I simply maintained my focus. During one visit home, I finally confronted them. My sister was complaining bitterly about her current job, claiming she deserved a much higher salary. My mother turned to me and suggested, "Perhaps you could speak to your boss about hiring her at your firm." I retorted, "She lacks the necessary experience. I worked relentlessly for years to earn my spot." My father frowned deeply and said, "Noah, don't be selfish. Family supports family." My sister smirked. "You act like you're some kind of big shot. It's just a job." That night, driving back to my apartment in January, I made an unshakable commitment. I would never allow them to dictate what I owed anyone. I wasn't harsh about it. I simply stopped sharing personal details. I never told them how much I earned, where I invested, or what my future plans were. When they asked, I kept my answers brief and vague. It wasn't anger, it was pure strategy. By the age of 28, my financial position had exceeded all my personal expectations. I had a very substantial bank account, a completely paid-off, reliable car, and zero debt. My sister was still living at home. She had acquired a newer vehicle, which my parents helped finance, and they covered many of her utility bills. She would post online about her independence, but I knew the truth. She eventually totaled that car. When my parents delicately reminded me that I should try to watch out for her, I simply nodded and changed the subject. I wasn't interested in arguing. I had larger goals and didn't need their approval. Every cynical remark and every moment I was overlooked only solidified my resolve. They were not going to change, and neither was I. By the time I was 29, I had established a strong, consistent routine. Work was steady, and my accumulated savings finally looked considerable. I maintained modest spending habits and frequently declined expensive outings. My friends sometimes called me overly frugal, but I knew exactly what I was doing. I was determined to own a property before my 33rd birthday. I started actively looking for places. I spent my weekends thoroughly researching listings, meeting with real estate agents, and crunching affordability numbers. I wasn't looking for a mansion, just a clean, well-maintained condominium in a safe area. After 7 months of searching, I found it. 3 spacious rooms, abundant natural light, and conveniently close to my office in Denver, Colorado. The price was fair, and I was financially able to cover the substantial down payment. Signing the purchase papers in August felt like crossing the ultimate finish line. I did not inform my family right away. I waited until I held the actual keys in my hand. Then, I sent a group text message featuring a snapshot of myself standing proudly in front of the building. Finally, I have my own place. It took some serious effort, but here we are. The initial replies were predictable. My mother responded, "Congratulations! When can we come over for a visit?" My father wrote, "Well done. Your sister will be eager to see it as well." My sister's text simply read, "About time, took you long enough." I invited them over for a small midday meal the following Saturday. I prepared food, kept the atmosphere simple, and gave them a quick tour. My mother immediately commented on how bright and open the space was and how perfectly suited it would be for a young couple with children. My father inquired specifically about the purpose of the third room, assuming it was a guest room or an office. My sister interrupted before I could answer. "It's clearly wasted space. Just picture a baby crib in here." I attempted a joke. "Good thing I bought it for my own use, not for you to use as a dollhouse." She rolled her eyes disdainfully. "You don't even have a partner or family. It's just you. It seems rather self-centered to keep such a large place entirely to yourself." My father gave me his usual look, suggesting I should simply tolerate her comment. I chose not to. "Yes," I said, "I worked 3 separate jobs and skipped vacations for 5 years so I could self-centeredly buy something using only my own money. Shocking, isn't it?" My mother quickly changed the topic, but I recognized the underlying tone. They were impressed,
but they seemed incapable of giving me full, unqualified credit. They asked about the cost of my new furniture, and then my father added, "Well, at least the location is excellent. It will be easy to sell when you decide to upgrade. Perhaps your sister can utilize it temporarily if she needs a short-term solution." I laughed out loud again. Yes, if she agrees to pay the market rental rate and signs a legally binding lease agreement. They visibly disliked that answer. My mother snapped, "You are so sarcastic. We are merely suggesting that families should support each other." "Precisely," I countered. "I supported myself because no one else was offering." They fell silent after that. The meal concluded smoothly, but the passive-aggressive comments continued over text. My sister would send messages like, "When I finally buy my own place, it will be much, much bigger than yours," or "Nice apartment, but it could definitely use more color." I would simply reply with a thumbs-up emoji or a concise, "Great, let me know when that happens."
4 months later, during another mandatory family dinner in December, tensions flared again. My sister was loudly lamenting how impossibly expensive everything had become. She complained bitterly about rental prices and fuel costs, saying, "It must be wonderful to live somewhere for free." I corrected her immediately. "It's not free. The bank loves receiving my monthly mortgage payments." My father quickly interjected, "She only means you don't have the stress of constantly worrying about moving. It's simply easier for you." "Yes," I responded. My sister shot me a venomous look. "It's easier when you meticulously plan ahead and don't quit every job you manage to get. You honestly believe you're superior because you bought a concrete box with windows?" she challenged. I replied, "I'm better than complaining endlessly about a box I don't own." My mother hastily urged us both to stop. "You two are always bickering. Your sister is just severely stressed." "She is always stressed," I emphasized. "Perhaps that's exactly why you continue paying for all her expenses." My father's voice rose sharply. "Enough! We help her because she genuinely needs it." "Right," I stated firmly. "And I managed because absolutely no one helped me." "Understood." The entire room went silent. My sister muttered something about my being inherently selfish. I simply stated that if being selfish means not having to depend on one's parents at the age of 30, then I was indeed guilty as charged. Despite the tension, I maintained my distance. I never asked them for anything. I never disclosed my financial status. I remained focused on my career. Everything was progressing perfectly. Meanwhile, my sister remained directionless. She worked a series of inconsistent short-term positions and maintained an online commentary criticizing the harshness of the current economy. Every time I visited home, my parents spoke at length about her grand visions and lofty aspirations, and they almost never asked about mine. I had stopped caring. I was secure in my own capabilities. However, the subtle suggestions didn't cease. My mother would propose, "When you decide to settle down, perhaps your sister could stay at your place for a while." My father joked, "Hope you got a spare key cut already." My sister giggled, "Yeah, you should make sure to keep the spare room tidy for when I need it." I gave the exact same answer every single time. Not happening. I worked to buy this place. One night in March, my father called unexpectedly. My sister needed a place to stay after a terrible breakup with Ethan. He asked if she could stay at my condo for a couple of weeks. I gave him a straight answer. "No." "She is your sister," he insisted. I replied, "She is also a grown woman. She has 2 concerned parents and access to a public bus system. She'll be fine." He was clearly displeased. "Noah, you've changed dramatically." "No," I calmly replied. "I just stopped being the convenient backup plan." I could sense the emotional impact of my words, but I felt no regret. I had been perfectly clear from the start. What I had built was entirely mine. They had decades to treat me like a valued family member. Instead, they chose to treat me like a support staff employee. I was merely reciprocating the energy they had given me.
6 months later, everything in my life was running precisely as I'd planned. My job was stable, my investments were growing, my condo was tastefully decorated and felt completely like my own sanctuary. My sister, meanwhile, was still residing at home. She had worked and quit 4 short-term jobs, and her brief relationship with Ethan had ended miserably. My parents continued to treat her like fragile glass, while I was simply the responsible one who didn't require coddling. Then came the annual family barbecue in late July. Everyone was present: parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. I arrived with some specialty drinks and side dishes. My sister arrived last, arm in arm with Ethan, her partner. The entire family instantly gathered around her as if she were the guest of honor. About 2/3 of the way through the meal, she stood up with a theatrical smile. "I have incredibly exciting news," she announced, raising her glass. "We're expecting a baby in the spring." Everyone erupted in cheers, hugging her and congratulating Ethan. I walked up to her and said, "Congratulations. I hope you're mentally prepared for 0 sleep." She smirked. "Well, I'll have a lot of help from everyone, right?" I let the comments slide. The night went on. Then my aunt asked her, "So, are you two still going to go through with the wedding plans?" My sister replied, "Yes, but the timeline has gotten complicated now." She then turned her attention directly to me and smiled with over-the-top warmth. "Actually, this is the perfect moment to mention this. I've been thinking about your condo. It would be the absolute perfect starter home for us. It's close to everything we need, and there's plenty of space for the baby. Plus, you have that extra room you don't even use." I almost burst out laughing, assuming it had to be a joke. "Good thing I bought it for myself, not for a lease agreement," I replied. Her face instantly hardened. "I am completely serious. We can't possibly stay with Mom and Dad forever. I need a proper safe space, and you have that extra bedroom that is just sitting empty." "You're right," I stated calmly. "It's my dedicated office space and storage for my possessions. It's amazing how people utilize rooms in the homes they actually own." She rolled her eyes again. "Oh, come on, Noah. You don't even have a partner or family. It's just you. This would genuinely help me out in a massive way. I worked 3 jobs for 7 years to buy it. Perhaps you could try that method." My mother quickly stepped in. "She is asking because she is in need. You are single. You can easily wait a few years to save up for another place." She stared pointedly at me. "Wait," I said, my voice rising slightly. "You want me to surrender the property I bought with my own money because she got pregnant?" My dad quickly responded, "She is starting a family. That is far more important than anything else right now. You'll understand when you have children of your own."
I shook my head slowly. So all those years I spent completely alone, working, paying rent, saving every dime, none of that counted for anything? But she gets pregnant, and suddenly my hard work becomes her entitlement? My sister folded her arms tightly. "Don't make a huge deal out of this. You can just rent a small place somewhere else for a year or 2. We'll take immaculate care of your condo." I genuinely laughed. "Yes, because you are famously good at taking care of things, like that job you quit after 3 weeks, or the last car you totaled." "Wow!" she shouted loudly. "So you're going to hold that over my head forever? I thought family helped family." "They do," I informed her, "when it's a mutually supportive relationship, not when it's a constant one-way handout." My mother's face stiffened. "You always have to dwell on the past. She is asking for help during a difficult period." "A difficult period is all I've ever seen," I shot back. "They made their own choices. I did not sign a contract. I am not their financial safety net." My father's voice became louder. "Do not speak to your sister that way. Show some respect to your family." I stood up from the table. "Respect is a two-way street. Respect my work, my finances, and my home." The table fell silent. My sister started to cry dramatically. "You are so unbelievably selfish. You have always been like this. It's just this one single thing, and you can't even do it for me." "One thing?" I challenged. "You've been handed everything since you were a child. The lavish parties, the cars, all the attention. I got endless lectures. And now you want the single thing I've worked for?
She became furious. "Fine, keep your stupid apartment, but don't you dare expect us to show up for your next big moment. We won't bother." "Trust me," I told her, my voice calm. "I stopped expecting you years ago." My mother mumbled something about my being cold and heartless. My father shook his head sadly, as if I were a profound disappointment. "I collected my belongings. I came here to share a meal, not to be publicly shamed for owning a home. I'll see you all eventually." On my way out the door, my sister called after me one last time. "You are gonna regret this when you are all alone." I turned and gave her my final answer: "Better alone than broke and bitter." That was the last time I attempted to maintain any pretense of politeness. The accusatory texts began arriving the very next day. My father wrote, "Noah, she cried the entire night. I sincerely hope you are happy with yourself." My mother said, "We raised you to have better morals than this." My sister sent a huge paragraph of text claiming I had utterly ruined her pregnancy joy. I simply did not respond to any of them. 4 days later, my sister called, leaving a message. "Fine, I don't want your place anymore, but you could at least give us some money to secure our own apartment?" I chuckled. "You want me to pay you a fee because I refuse to give you my home? That's certainly an inventive approach." She hung up.
Following that, the main family group chat turned glacial. My parents acted distant and implied to relatives that I had become arrogant and snobby. I truly did not care. I had a fantastic career, a healthy savings account, and my own secure space. I had earned it all myself. I was not going to forfeit it because someone else couldn't handle her own life choices. After the barbecue incident, I chose to enforce a strict boundary. I did not reply to any subsequent guilt trip messages. My sister remained hostile. My parents were consistently cold. At first, I thought things would eventually settle down. Instead, they intensified their campaign. They started telling other relatives about how incredibly selfish I was. A cousin messaged me, "What is going on? Your mom said you wouldn't let Madison stay with you for just a few weeks." I responded once. Clearly, I bought my own home after a decade of working. They believe it's an extension of their resources, which it is not. Many of my cousins privately agreed with my stance. A few commented, "Yeah, your parents have always completely babied her." That validation was nice, but I no longer needed it. Work remained my safe haven. I put in more hours, volunteered for complex projects, and my efforts were clearly noted. A few months later, in October, my manager contacted me about yet another promotion. It came with a substantial salary increase and increased work flexibility. I decided to celebrate, but this time I extended no invitation to my parents or sister. I hosted a small party with close friends and a few genuinely supportive relatives. Everyone else sent their sincere congratulations. My parents didn't even send a text message. My sister made a cryptic online comment about families who forget who their true priorities are, which I entirely ignored. Then things started to shift noticeably. My parents began hinting at serious financial strain. I learned from my aunt that they were covering nearly all of my sister's rapidly mounting expenses. She had quit another job during her pregnancy, citing excessive stress. They were covering a portion of her rent, her car insurance, and the medical copays. My father had even begun withdrawing funds from his retirement account. I deliberately stayed out of it. Every time I received an ambiguous text like, "Your sister is truly struggling right now," I simply replied, "Hope she finds a way to work things out." About a month before the baby was due, in February, my mother called me for the first time in weeks. She asked cautiously, "Could you please just lend your sister a small amount of cash, just until they can find stability?" I replied, "You mean give her money so she doesn't have to learn how to manage her own life for the next 6 months?" She responded, her voice tight, "You've changed so much. You used to care about your family." I replied, "I learned who actually cared about me. It was not either of you." She hung up, defeated. The baby arrived,
Everyone reacted as if it were a major national event. I sent a small, practical gift with a brief card. "Congrats! Wishing health for the baby." My sister texted back, "Wow, that's it?" I intentionally left the message unread.
As the following months passed, it became abundantly clear that their situation was not improving. Ethan's work remained sporadic. The bills piled up relentlessly. They eventually moved back in with my parents. When money became impossibly tight, the wedding plans were completely abandoned. I learned all this from my aunt, who told me, "Your parents are beyond stressed. Your father is covering literally everything." I simply stated that they had made their choices. I wasn't gloating, it was merely the objective truth. Then came the moment that served as my ultimate closure. My father called again, his tone unusually subdued. He admitted, "We may have been unnecessarily hard on you, Noah. We genuinely didn't realize how much you accomplished completely on your own." He then asked if I could contribute a reasonable, fixed amount of money each month until they were able to get back on their feet. I nearly laughed out loud. So, after all those years of hearing, "You're fine, you can handle it," I am now expected to carry the entire family's financial burden? "No, thank you," I told him. He insisted it was what family did. I replied, "Exactly. Family supports each other. They don't drain one another. I learned that principle directly from you." That ended the call. The true deep satisfaction arrived later that December. My company hosted a massive end-of-year gala event. They recognized specific employees for significant year-long contributions. I was one of the honorees. My photograph was displayed on a massive screen, and my name was publicly announced in front of the entire company and some local news media. They awarded me a substantial performance bonus. I shared one high-quality photo online of myself beaming proudly with the award trophy. I did not tag anyone. The comments flooded in, from friends, coworkers, and former classmates. My sister did not leave a single comment. My mother liked the post, but never wrote anything. My father remained completely silent. When I saw them all at the mandatory Christmas dinner a month later, the atmosphere was drastically different. They were polite and noticeably quieter than usual. My sister barely spoke to me. My father asked about my work in a completely neutral tone. My mother talked primarily about the baby. No one mentioned the condo. No one requested money. It was as if they already knew the final answer. My sister quietly whispered, "Noah, you must feel incredibly proud of yourself." I responded, "Not proud, just grateful I stopped waiting for anyone else's approval years ago." My father slightly shook his head but offered no disagreement. My mother quickly hugged me and murmured, "Drive home safely." That was the end of it. Looking back, I never received the sincere apology I truly deserved, but I gained something far superior: distance, complete financial control, and undeniable proof that I could construct a successful life entirely without their help. The child who was constantly told he had to understand while his sister received all the attention grew into a man who required absolutely none of their attention at all. They remain the same people. She is still self-entitled. They are still actively enabling her. But none of that carries any weight for me anymore. I have my own home, my career, and my peace. When I lock my front door every evening, I remember that every piece of furniture, every mortgage payment made, and every single square foot of that Denver condo is solely the result of my own unwavering effort. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider supporting our channel for more genuine stories of family resilience. Thank you for watching.